The primary constituents of a glyphosate-based product is the glyphosate salt, which is part of the formulation, important part of the formulation. But what really drives the efficacy and uptake of the product is really the loading and the choice of surfactants that are in that formulation. So, and that's what really drives the difference between branded Roundup products and other available products in the market. Those surfactants and the blend of surfactants which improve the uptake, improve the translocation of glyphosate within the plant, so moving the glyphosate to where it needs to accumulate in order to achieve the best efficacy. And that's why we see a much more reliable and consistent level of efficacy from the trials in the field that we conduct, particularly at our weed screens down in Cambridge. So have you got 3 key tips for us, John, about glyphosate resistance management and what we need to do in order to preserve efficacy for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, in the real short term, you can access some free glyphosate resistance testing through the spring drilling window. Talk to your local Bayer technical representative, or you can contact ADAS and we'll put you in touch. I think the other thing that we've appreciated more and more as we've gone through this process is just how important biosecurity is going to be and should be in protecting yourself from protecting your neighbours, and even nationally from spread of resistant weeds and from new weeds coming onto the farm. And I think the last thing that I'd reflect on is just exactly how important monitoring, vigilance, that building up a picture of herbicide performance in the field, understanding where you're having failures and why, and the feedback which helps you to improve herbicide practice and sustainable use, but also to pick up resistance problems really early, and what an important role that monitoring and vigilance has played in picking up the limited number of cases we've got at the moment.
And timing is obviously also really important. For any glyphosate product, timing, you can't overcome sort of fundamental problems around poor timing by choosing a better branded product. So obviously as we move into the spring and plants get bigger, then plants become much more difficult to control and to manage. And as we move into that stem extension phase of growth, we know that the glyphosate moves upwards in support of the developing stem in here, so the plant is moving and mobilising energy reserves and nutrients upwards in the plant, and that's the direction of travel for the glyphosate, so it's being moved away from the roots. So you can turn the foliage of the plant brown quite easily, but what you typically see is regrowth from the base of the plant. So you're not accumulating glyphosate in the roots, you're not killing the roots, and therefore you see this regrowth symptom, which is quite common from late applications. Weeds are typically better controlled when they're smaller, particularly in the sort of early spring, and we know obviously active growth is important to get the best from glyphosate, but again we know because of the surfactant systems within Roundup branded products, actually you get better uptake and movement of glyphosate in the plant, so even under cooler conditions you tend to see a better result from a branded product under those conditions. And so and the same with cover crop destruction. Obviously, if there's a big massive cover crop that you're trying to destroy ahead of establishing a spring cereal, for example, then again, timing of application, getting that on early enough to allow a window for the cover crop to sort of break down and degrade before planting the cereal is really important. So John, we get questions about use of citric acid with glyphosate. Have you got some comments or thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean obviously the thoughts behind, the motivation behind using citric acid is the understanding that glyphosate works better at quite low pHs, but it's really important to understand that the glyphosate products themselves are quite acidic.
Yep.
And a mix with glyphosate and water ready to spray is a very acidic mix. And I think, before you start thinking about making dramatic changes to the pH with something like citric acid, if you can, test the pH of the mixture you're about to spray, and I think you'll find that it is at around the optimum for the glyphosate to work. So in that context, putting something in the tank that's going to drop the pH even more to a really, really acidic mix, I'm not sure about the wisdom of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you drop the pH below 4 in the spray tank, then what happens is you end up crystallising glyphosate out on the leaf, and so you limit uptake. Yeah, and from a sort of underdosing point of view, suboptimal dose rates is really
Absolutely.
negative.